Hi, and welcome to another episode of ChequedTV, your source for the latest tips, tricks, and trends in human capital management. We're coming to you today, as we do with every episode, from the Check.com World Headquarters here in Saratoga Springs, New York. And you know, we film an episode of the series every Friday afternoon here at the headquarters. So if you're ever in Saratoga or in the neighborhood, feel free to let us know. We'll save a seat for you in our studio audience. We'd love to have you come by. Today we're going to delve into one of the most frequently asked questions that we hear from our ChequedReference clients. And it has to do with how to interpret apparent discrepancies in the ChequedReference reports. Our guest expert today is Vince Smith. Vince is one of our product managers here at Check.com, and he in fact is employee number one after our founder, Greg Moran. And so he really does understand the ins and the outs of the product better than anyone else. Vince, before we get going, would you care for a cigarette?
I really have cut back, George.
You have? You mind if I do?
I would encourage it.
This episode is not, in fact, sponsored by King's Candy Cigarettes, but I do want to make a really garish plug for our presence at HR Tech, October 8th and 9th. We'll be at booth 670, and if you're there, please stop by for a Check-Teeny at 4 o'clock on Monday. Now back to our episode. These are terrible. So, Vince, ChequedReference. I know that this has come up several times to many of our clients. They get a report, they're reading the report, and there is an apparent discrepancy between the data that the report provides and the subjective information or comments that happen. Please explain.
Sure, it happens all the time. I guess the first thing to explain is that ChequedReference, our automated reference checking product is set up to be predictive of job success, and to do that we ask references questions that relate back to critical competencies that are critical competencies to success in a given position, and then we put all those scores together from all the different reference ratings and give a score. Basically, think of it as an assessment score driven by the references to tell you whether a person's actually going to likely to succeed on the job, your job, or not. The other part of what our system does, though, is ask or allow references to put in generic comments. Tell us about the relationship with the candidate, what they thought of them. Would they rehire the candidate? Why? How good of a job that they did? Basically, the things that you think of coming from the traditional phone-based reference check, right? So we've got two different things going on. We've got these subjective comments that people tend to give about the candidate or their friend or acquaintance. And then we have the underlying science, which is predicting whether that person is going to succeed in your job. And believe it or not, the two things don't always line up. And we get a lot of questions about that, right? So we get people where the comments from all the references are glowing. Hard worker, great person to work with, loved by everybody on the team, came in early, stayed late. Sounds like a real winner.
Right.
And then oftentimes we see a report like the one we have here, where
you brought props.
I did. We brought one prop
Our first prop ever
of an example here, where the comments, which we'll get into in a minute for this particular person, were absolutely glowing, but their overall score up here is 2.5 out of 5. And we look at it and say, well, the science is absolutely doing its job, and we expect to see some of these discrepancies, but not everybody. It's not intuitive.
And to be clear, this is a real report from a real job candidate.
This is a small portion of the actual real report. And for the particular job that this person was applying for, we were measuring certain competencies that we know are critical to succeeding in this particular role. It doesn't tell us if the person's good, bad, or whatever. It just tells us how likely they are to succeed in the role. So we actually don't care about anything else when we're hiring the person. We want to know, are they going to be an A player?
Right.
And this particular one came back for a management position. Came back that she actually was not really cut out.
Checks on a reference. That's a pretty low score.
It's a very low score. And it's a good thing to know. Right before you make that hire. As of no, you don't want to do this after.
Because probably this person got through several filters of the recruitment process. Therefore, the hiring manager thought they were they would have been a good hire.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about a reference check, reference checks are only done on the finalist candidates that you're likely to hire, or that you already are about to make a hire.
Right.
You
So
know,
what did the comments say?
well, some of these comments, well, right here, there's another section just beyond our regular comments. It's the rehire section.
Okay.
We ask every reference, would you, if applicable, rehire this person, and then give us some commentary on your answer. In this case, every single reference said, absolutely, we'd hire this person. Once again, they're a great worker, so on and so forth. I don't know if you can zoom in on any of the responses there, but they're all glowing responses to, yeah, they loved working with this person. They were, a great member of the team that everybody liked and did a good job. And you know what? They very well may have done a fantastic job where they were and for the position that they were in.
But for this position, they
This
didn't
position,
fit.
they didn't fit. They got a 2.5 checks. But that really goes to show you the power of using the objective and science-driven data that's job relevant in kind of getting away from that fluffy, normal reference check commentary that we're used to.
Now, you mentioned to me earlier that you used to have a business where you were a professional reference checker.
Yes.
Tell us how that traditional reference checking, I guess we'd call it, compares to this.
All right. Well, in that particular company, what we did is we provided a service, a reference checking service, very expensive one, by the way, $500 plus a reference check. And we would call up not only the references provided by a company, but we do research and figure out who else they work with. And we have this very long, in-depth conversation and put together this report that took into account the person's intonation and how sincere we thought they were, and whether they should take the comments of any reference at face value or with a grain of salt, so to speak, and then put an executive summary together at the end. It all looked very, very good and felt very good, and the clients felt like they were getting a lot of great information. And they did get a lot of good information, except there was one kind of critical piece missing.
A score, right? There's no numerical
Well,
number.
What all that meant to the job that they were being hired for,
Okay,
right?
right.
There's no real connection,
Right, right,
drawn to it.
right.
It was, it felt good, it looked good, but it really didn't actually
Right,
predict
right.
job success.
Because the presumption on the hiring manager's part was that this must be a good candidate for the job, or they couldn't have gotten past me.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. The references all gave great feedback, or these people sounded like they were lying, whatever. But it had nothing to do with, scientifically identified
Right.
critical competencies for a job.
Right.
So it's the giant differentiator there.
All right. Well, Vince, that's fantastic information. I think a very, very useful prop. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for joining us again for this episode of ChequedTV. And join us again next Friday. We'll delve into another pressing trend, trick, or topic of human capital management. Thanks.